well as the regulatory side of things, having to actually keep up with what the tech has to bring in terms of the ecosystem space, in terms of the utility value, and in terms of looking at it from a valuation framework model, can it actually be another asset class? So today's panel topic, I'd like to first start off with talking about what we're actually quite familiar with or associate with recently in terms of ICOs and SCOs. So I want to start with Ville. Ville is the CEO of Davos, co-founder and CEO of Davos Custody in Singapore. So maybe Ville, can you share a bit about your work in this space and what do you actually think about how can we, on a positive note, how can we actually identify and support good projects, in your opinion?
Sure, thank you. So, first a couple of words on Davos Custody. We're digital asset custodian, purpose-built for safekeeping of cryptographic assets, based here in Singapore. Before this, I was one of the first MAS-regulated fund manager managed crypto asset fund, or a fund that invested in crypto assets. And before that, I did a number of things in technology, cybersecurity, traditional fintech, and then before that, I was with Deloitte in healthcare. So, sort of been in this industry for about 6 years, which means that I've seen quite a lot, basically from the times when the regulatory discussion and the panels on regulation of cryptocurrencies didn't exist, and we've come tremendously far from those days. So basically, I think the one big approach that needs to emerge, and that is increasingly emerging today, is that when clients invest in crypto assets, they think of these assets as any other investment assets that they put their money in. And if you're managing assets or somebody else's money and assets, you need to treat those assets the same way as you treat any other asset. And that's where the philosophy for the guidelines and regulations comes from. I don't personally think that there's, we should, or this industry should wait until the last minute to implement all these typical frameworks and best practices that relate to asset management. We know what they are. We can do our homework. We can implement these philosophies, and then we can be ready for the compliance. That's been sort of the approach that we've taken, and I think it works well. The discrepancy typically comes from the fact that people say that, well, this technology is so innovative and so quick that we can do things differently. But just like in healthcare, the fact of the matter is that technology is ahead of regulation, and regardless of the fact that you can do things differently and conveniently, what you do might be out of bounds, so to speak. So we can do things with good benchmarks. A lot of the approaches exist, and you can just play by the rules until the rules evolve in cooperation, industry, and regulation.
So what I hear from you is, a balance between a pragmatic approach in order to execute within, regulatory guidelines, but at the same time, for good projects to thrive, the fundamentals are still the same in terms of how do we actually assess the projects and their value. So I want to hear from Boon. So Boon is the global head of market advocacy for Deutsche Bank. I mean, just following on this topic, on this question, what are some of the risks you actually see in your line of work and what you do, and how can we actually be more aware in terms of the risks of investors, for example?
Thank you very much, Stephanie, and thank you to everybody for this opportunity to share views. My name is Boon from Deutsche Bank. market changes and what it means, for the market, for the clients, and for the product. So we focus on the intersection between technology, laws and regulations, and market practice. In terms of STO, right, let me just approach it from, let's say, 2 or 3 angles. First of all, the use of ICO, right, let me restart. STO seems to be a close cousin of ICO, but the use of STO, right, I would hypothesize that it has changed from the use of ICO. ICO came up, to Daphne's first question, what are some good projects? ICO came up to support projects, but when we are talking about STO, then it attracts securities, regulations, and laws, and therefore then it backs a delta analysis of if I use STO, what's the advantage of using a traditional registration of ACRA and raise private money in order to set up my business versus a crowdfunding approach. So I think that needs to be really clear, because from there, then the risk to the investor and the risk to the issuer and to the banking community starts to differ. Let me just use an example. From a crowdfunding perspective, you know that you are investing, how should I say, low value, right? So for a STO, how much are you actually looking to raise then? And then in our conversation, right? Well, you can actually do under current SFA, you can actually currently do a small placement under existing rules and laws that is recognized by everybody, that you don't need to go through the challenges that is posed by, I would like to issue in a crypto. So I think, we have to be really clear why we want to issue a crypto security. Or is it actually an umbrella right now to ensure that there is consumer protection after the hype around ICO? And could this actually lead to some sort of hybrid laws and regulation that can combine the best of ICOs with investor protection?
That's interesting, and I want to actually extend this now to Li-Ling, to following on what Boon said. But can we backtrack a bit? Li-Ling is the partner for RHB Law Taylor Wessing. What is actually, how would you define the definition of STO first? And to Boon's suggestion on innovating something in between. What's your take on that? And also share your life and work right now.
Okay. Hi everyone. Happy to be here and thank you for staying so late. Hope it's been worth your while. So I'm a partner with RHB Law Taylor Wessing. We are a full service law firm with ASEAN capabilities. We do focus on a few key industries, including tech. So over the last few years, our firm has been quite active in advising fintech companies in different projects. They could be technology service providers. They could be companies looking for funding and thinking of issuing tokens as an alternative way of raising funds. We also act for companies who believe that their technology contains an innovative element, or their business model contains an element. So we put in quite a few sandbox applications for our clients as well as the RMO applications and so on. So we've been quite active, our team and us, over the last few years, and we find this space to be very exciting. However, before I answer this question, I must first preface it by saying that although we are seated here on this stage, for myself, I wouldn't profess myself to be an expert. It is very much an area that is still changing and very complex, with many aspects of the ecosystem that is not easy to understand. So the dialogue has to continue. It continues to take a lot of collaboration, dialogue, and sharing and education. So coming back to there are various definitions of STOs, but for the purposes of today's panel discussion, we're using it to mean tokens that take the characteristics and nature of securities. So they give the holder a certain economic right. It could be a revenue share, it could be a share in profits, shared in some form of distribution. So we're talking about SCOs in that context. Tokens that contain characteristics of security. Oh, the evolution from ICOs to SCOs has been really interesting. Back in the day, if you remember 2016 to 2017 to 2018, the global number of ICOs and the amount raised were just tremendous. But with that tremendous rise also came a lot of publicity about failures, hacking, scams, and for ourselves as well, we had advised clients who were at that time issuing tokens, utility tokens. When we talk about ICOs, we're talking about utility tokens, not security tokens. So utility tokens are actually very specific in what they mean. They cannot afford any form of an economic reward because then it will fall within the category of securities and then it will fall within prospectus requirements. So for a utility token to succeed, it must be access to a project, a product or service. And we've had clients who are able to show a very good use case for their tokens. Because why? For a token issuance to succeed, you must have enough demand. People must know about your product or your service. And then there must be an ecosystem thereafter for that token to be used or exchanged or in a way traded. Okay? And we have identified that for ICOs, utility tokens to succeed, you really need a very good use case. And if you don't have your ICO, you can issue your tokens, but you won't be very successful thereafter in terms of maintaining that ecosystem for your tokens. And so then it evolved into security tokens, tokens with elements of security, because people invest, they want some form of returns. So again, we've been advising quite a few companies on different types of tokenization. The one that's clearest to everyone is the tokenization of real estate. Although theoretically you can tokenize any form of asset. In the market, you can Google and you'll find that people have tokenized art pieces, people have tokenized land in Jerusalem. So you can practically tokenize any kind of asset that you can imagine. But the trick and the devil always lies in the detail. What are the rights of the token holders? And then how do you deal with the rights of these token holders vis-a-vis existing stakeholders like your existing shareholders? Things like that. So still a very growing and dynamic industry.
Thank you. Did anyone share with us?
Yeah, just a couple of comments on the ICO field techniques. I think one good comparison is ICOs is a lot like, and it really emerged from the whole crowdfunding ideology, where basically the trick is that the entrepreneur gets to define the terms of the funding. Because typically earlier companies, VC stage companies, would be on the mercy of the VC investor who defines the terms. So flip it over into a crowdfunding, you get to decide the terms. Now take it to an ICO tokenized economy, and basically it becomes even more money. And there's a huge amount of ICOs that gave no rights to the investors. And this is basically raised tens of millions of dollars, probably hundreds of millions combined, with nothing to the investor. So, but technically and legally it was done correctly because you get to define the terms. And if you participate and it's not regulated, then that's where the bad examples come from. Now, go to the security token definition, and when you introduce the term security, the entire regulation from securities, related to securities, rolls in automatically. Because securities is defined, it's well defined, and if you touch securities, you need a license for that. So then all the compliance requirements come in. So it's a totally different ballgame. It's not about the tech anymore, it's about regulation. Now, another thing that comes into play, that scenario, which I think I referred earlier that should come into play with all crypto assets in general is the segregation of duties. So in asset management and finance, you have segregation of duties by default. That segregation existed before personal computing existed. It's not going to be changed by a database technology. So it's there. These roles are segregated because it's a risk management method, basically. So if we're just bringing in a new asset class, which happens to be digital, you still need these roles in place. Or you need a pretty strong and long case to argue that those roles would be somehow weak. So, and that's what leads into our positioning as well, which is custody, because basically you're managing assets, you can't hold your client's assets. Quote unquote, you can't have your client's cash in your office safe, right? Because
yeah, thanks, Vivek. I want to actually continue that with Rebecca. I think it's very interesting because we just had the FedEd in Vienna, and some of our colleagues are there right now. So Rebecca is a head of regulatory compliance at Diginex. So I wanted to also understand, your area of work right now in Diginex, and how do you feel relating to the, increased regulatory scrutiny and international standards relating to FedEd, SEC on AML and KYC? Do you think that it's a good progress for blockchain, crypto sector, or does it actually impede the progress? What do you think?
Hello everyone, thank you for sharing with me today. My name is Rebecca Wu and I am with Diginex. Diginex is a global blockchain solution and financial services company, and I have been personally working in the financial industries for 15 years in compliance in banks and financial institutions. And my role at Diginex is the head of regulatory compliance, ensuring that any financial offerings or institutional solutions that we roll out will be compliant with the full regulations. Coming back to the questions from Stephanie, I think regulation is vital. Without it, there would be lack of suitable solutions for institutional adoption of the digital or crypto space. We are working with regulators and industry organizations in developing regulatory developments and regulations because regulation is essential in managing risk in the industry. Those risks that our panel has talked about, for example, financial crimes, customer protections, as well as safekeeping of client assets. So regulation is key and is healthy for the development of the crypto industry.
Yeah, so we have a very interesting question that just came up. Can we just flash the question? So the question is, Thailand's central bank had came up with requirements to manage the cryptocurrencies and its exchange earlier in 2019. Is this helpful to Singapore's crypto scene? Should MAS be considering a similar requirement that's specific to crypto assets and its exchange? It's also a bit like what Vivek shared a bit about Davos custody as well. So anyone want to chime in on this? Vivek, Boon? Yeah.
Sure, I can take it. So, I think that there's been a couple of years of good activity in the definition of these regulations to be in this thing. Of course, there's a lot of awareness building and knowledge acquisition to be done also on the regulatory side, because let's remember that the regulatory authorities are not actively involved in the development of these protocols, for example. So there's work to be done in order to assess the whole question correctly, and it takes time. You can't jump into it. It's the same thing again. I always use the medical comparison, but it's the same thing. You have molecular scientists doing one thing, and then you have regulatory authorities and medical compliance boards doing something else. So there's a bit of a gap in between. It takes time. I get that, but yes, I think the regulators are talking with each other all the time. They're taking slightly different paths and emphasize slightly different points. So basically, but in general, this approach is very similar. So I would say for that question that MAS is doing a lot, has been doing a lot all along. So basically, I'm sure they know each and every dot and comma of that regulation.
Yeah, good. Yeah.
I would assume that that refers to the Emergency Decree on the Digital Asset Act. So I'll be answering on that basis. I think fundamentally, right, the Thailand and Singapore approach, and in fact, right, many regulatory approach, right, is a similar focus on two things, right? KYC, AML on one, and investor protection on the other. How they approach that, it can be slightly different. We just talk about STO, right? So I'll just link these two together. In Thailand, they actually passed also a regulation on ICO, and they recognize actually ICO not as security, not as utility, but as investor participation node, right? Somewhere in between. To recognize that it doesn't fall squarely into security or as a utility, and actually utility has got some severe potential disadvantages to the holder of utility tokens, right? So I can talk about that later. So on that basis, going back to the question about whether should Singapore follow or not follow, I think Thailand has looked at defining the security, whereas Singapore has been focused on activity on one hand, and on the like for example Payment Services Act with its focus on virtual currency, and on the RMO, which actually then focuses on potential crypto exchanges as well. But ultimately, when we boil it down, investor protection and KYC, AML, what could come next then, right, would be the things that banks grapple with, market abuse, and and other things, right? But we'll stick with the first two: KYC, AML, one, and investor protection, and how it gets expressed can be different, but the objectives will be similar.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, we'll just have one more question, and we have quite a few questions coming in. Can we show the next one? So, do you think the Singapore crypto sector is prepared for the upcoming Payment Services Act? And do they have an understanding of the work and cost that comes with being licensed and or offering a security token? Can I just pose this to the ladies? Anyone?
Okay, I'll take a shot at this. We are acting for two clients who have come to us to seek advice under the upcoming Payment Services Act. These would typically be the e-money, e-wallet providers, digital token issuers. How Singapore crypto sector is prepared? I believe they are, because the consultation process has taken some time, and I think the regulators also been quite clear on the objectives behind the legislation, which is to deal with money laundering concerns and financing of terrorism concerns. How do you deal with funds that are lost or owing to customers or to service providers due to insolvency? Things like that. So, well, we get to work with quite a few clients, and they seem to be quite aware of the impending legislation.
Any similarities drawn in Hong Kong?
Yeah, I think basically around the globe, because the data is also issued the AML requirements will be applicable to crypto business, so it will be a trend to stay. Wherever in the world you are, these regulations will be applicable, and it makes a lot of sense, because I think it is one of the large inherent risks for the crypto industry. And in fact, as you mentioned, our Chief Compliance Officer, Malcolm Wright, is in Vienna this week at the FATF Consultation Forum. We believe active participation with regulatory policies makers, it will be healthy for both the industry as well as the whole ecosystem as a whole.
Definitely, I would like to
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to break the ecosystem, this word, right, taking, into a few bits, right? So there's a crypto business, which will have to comply. There's a banks, right, which, may be opening a bank accounts for these crypto businesses. Are they prepared? Are the lawyers and auditors prepared as well to do their part? And finally, the regulators too. Bear in mind, right, FATF, and then, the requirements under the FATF 7B, which requires for AML purposes to identify both the originator ID as well as the beneficiary ID. In public permissionless blockchain, right, Bitcoin for example, how do you then go about identifying your beneficiary ID? So I think, when it comes to being prepared, I would say that, there's a lot of discussions, there's very much good work being done. Right, including, for example, a code of conduct that is being discussed between the banks, the regulators and the crypto businesses. The crypto businesses also needs to identify as well who are the high risk, who are the medium risk, who are the low risk type of business. But importantly, there's not an absolute, I am 100% prepared on day one. I would think that this will be an evolutionary process, and the participants in these ecosystems need to then demonstrate best effort and not just, okay, right? If we take a lead from Japan requirements for KYC AML has got at least, right, an additional element that is not in Singapore's today. For example, is there a level 1 control at the business level for, proper governance? Is there a level 2 control over level 1? Is there then a level 3 control over level 2 and level 1? Very similar to a banking setup, but this is imposed on large crypto businesses. Singapore doesn't have this requirement at this point in time. Could this trend towards that practice, right? It remains to be seen, and therefore that's why I think preparation will be a continuous process whereby all the people, all the ecosystem participants need to learn with each other.
Just a couple of thoughts on that. I totally agree. There's sort of this situation where we should look at what's already out there and what kind of benchmarks can we use for tackle these questions. What kind of sort of guidelines or thresholds there are. We should look at, and I guess largely we also have, like cash transaction limits, for example, that's a good benchmark. Now, in the money laundering directive, in EU, that threshold dropped for virtual currencies to 150 euros, so which is really, really low compared to the previous ones. Maybe sort of indicating a new approach with this specific asset class. But also, even before that, we could benchmark what's happening in precious metals, for example. You can't really show somebody owns a gold bar. How do you prove the ultimate DPO? You need to just get the client warrant saying that, yeah, I own this bar, then you sign here. So that's a procedure and that's an exception. So basically, we can take things like this and use that. And then, of course, client profile, transaction monitoring, they are requirements from crypto operators are, I guess, largely in place already.
From what I gather here, I think, in order to have that preparedness and execution, there must be adequate understanding, actually. At a very detailed level, whether you're a regulator or you're a stakeholder. I think that is very fundamental to what you want to achieve.
And actually, on this point as well, right, is the regulator also prepared to take a sense of no action, right? If because this is a new field, everybody's also learning as we're going, right? For banks, for crypto businesses, and if there could be one or two stuff that happen, are the regulators prepared to say, okay, we understand this, you have demonstrated evidence on best effort basis, and we all learn together, and it doesn't become punitive in order to that could then discourage the progress of this new industry.
Because a lot of fear and the risk of losing it always starts from not understanding. So I think that is really important. Before we talk about the final one, which is the future of crypto, I want to have the word cloud out. A word cloud. So describe in one word the future of the ASEAN crypto space. space in 2030. So everyone, you can just log in. Want to talk a bit about this. So there are a lot of contradicting news, whether okay, but it's very small. There's only one word there. Yeah. But I have other words to of dying. Okay. Okay, let's go to that later. Okay. So there are a lot of contradicting news about whether banks will have crypto trading desks. They can't evaluate, the framework. How do you value, this asset? Is this asset value based on two primary considerations, utility and scarcity? Is this a good model for valuing it because there's the absence of cash flow and financial projections behind it? So what's the future of crypto? Yeah, so I wanted to hear a bit from the panelists, but everyone's laughing about what's that? What is BOOMS? What does BOOMS mean?
Is that the derivation of my name?
Maybe I can start off the discussion.
Yeah.
The responses surprised me, honestly. I thought it would be a lot more balanced or at least positive because, the technology is changing very much and really over the last few years you see tokens, security tokens, I'm not sure whether this is now a bad word, alternative ways of fundraising. I think it is a matter of time that the technology will be developed and create an ecosystem where digital tokens can be traded on exchanges and there will be proper structures for liquidity, price discovery, disclosure, transparency and all that. Because we left the second last question hanging, and it relates to this one, if increased regulatory scrutiny and increased regulations, Rebecca and I both believe, would generally have a positive impact on cryptos or tokens. Because regulatory uncertainty is going to create a drag on the rate at which companies would be confident to access this platform as a means of raising funds. If you have regulatory clarity, the serious issuers would step forward because they are confident about their business case and confident about the technology. When there's regulatory clarity, right, the opportunistic ones who are in to maybe cash in on a hype will fall away because they know that there's a certain standard to abide by. And I'm not sure whether it is relevant in this discussion to just mention that regulations and laws is not necessarily a bad word. It's very hard to flourish in a state of uncertainty. The absence of law does not mean proliferation and freedom. The absence of law really is anarchy, and nothing can flourish in that state. So increased regulatory scrutiny, I believe, would be helpful. So coming back to that question, I just hope to impart that maybe this panel can hope to share that actually the future of crypto may not be so dire as long as all parties in the ecosystem continue that discussion, from the regulators to the tech to the people who are trying to raise funds. That whole ecosystem has to continue that conversation. And I mean, for myself and my team, we are quite heartened that our regulators are always quite open to consultation and so on, because everyone is still learning.
Yeah, I think that's really uplifting. I mean, for you, you're really coming from the capital markets traditional space, but it could be partly due to fatigue. This is the last panel of the day. Yeah, Delay and Boon, anyone? Okay, but it's time's up.
Yeah, the way I think some of the words that come up associate more with the initial stage of crypto space, where it is not regulated. But we are entering a new phase that regulations are launching around the world. Regulators are taking proactive actions into creating these regulated space where all the, as we said, all the hit and run players would eventually die out. And leaving all those players who believe all the good principles, good practice principles in the traditional financial world, how it applies in this new space. It will be very interesting to see how this will play out. And coming back to your question, year 2030, from a compliance perspective, I would expect regulations would be entrenching every major
Any one last words from Boon and Lily? Something positive to end off.
My first answer is that, we'd like to borrow 5 minutes from the clock panel. Thank you very much. Again, right, I'm sorry, I seem to be trying to break things down, right? So I'll break down the crypto again. I can relate to the dying part, because right from a crypto Bitcoin, right, which is right now accepted. Seriously, right, everybody knows about Bitcoin, but guess what, right? At some point in time, it's going to hit this peak. There will be no miners' rewards, and therefore, right, without the incentive to incentivize miners, how is the the security of this Bitcoin world, right? How can it be maintained? Will the transaction fee be sufficient to continue to incentivize the miners to perform the integrity checks? If not, does Bitcoin then risk, right, dying? So I can actually relate to that. But in place, right, there's a new growth. We are seeing the growth of new private money, right? Facebook, Samsung Electronics, etc. We are seeing, right, the use of private money in financial inclusion. And we are actually seeing as well, being deployed in financial inclusion, mitigating de-risking. For example, using derivation of cryptocurrency as a payment method to link rural banks to regional banks, so that the rural banks can continue in their intermediation of funds, right, between overseas workers to their home. So there are bright spots. So in place of dying, this would be the booming part.
Yeah, thanks, because you answered one question that came just now, which is what are some of the main problems that crypto assets will solve. Okay, we need to finalize with delay. Give us an inspirational last word.
I think one word that would be nice to see there is transparency. And in crypto, focus on two things: transparency of the code and transparency of the supply. So basically, as an asset class, if you think about cryptos, it's pretty unique to see an asset where basically, or commodity if you want, where you have a guarantee and full transparent audit trail to the entire supply. I don't think that exists in many places, and that's the value proposition. So basically, if it's a means of exchange and the value is accepted, it's valuable even if it doesn't change hands. It's not discussed very much, and it's usually not included. But I think the audit trail of the cryptocurrencies that are on public ledger is a valuable component of that asset class. Then secondly, the transparency of the code is interesting because if you compare it to scrutinizing how bank transactions happen, for example, you can't really do that. But if you have a smart contract, which is often you can scrutinize how that works, and you know exactly how it does work. So these are fundamental differences to the way financial sector has worked before, and these are components that are valuable and that can be used in a very, very effective, positive way.
All right. Okay, I think that's the end of our panel.